Hello everybody, and welcome to a special Planet Zoo Pride stream. We are here today raising money for charity. We're going to be raising money for the RZSS, which is the Royal Zoological Society of Scotland. They work with a few of our friends. One of them you've met before, which was the Highland Wildlife Park, who we had on our last charity stream. And then they're also working with Edinburgh Zoo, who we have here with us today. They do many different things, but they're a conservation charity who, one thing they're doing that is incredible is working towards a pledge that they've made to try and reduce the decline of at least 50 animals by 2030. I believe it's at least 50, which is absolutely astounding. So it's a wonderful, wonderful cause. And if you are interested in helping support us today, if you are on Twitch, if you're on YouTube, head over to Twitch, or the link will be put in the chat by our wonderful mods. But you can put !donate and get the link. And if you at any point forget, or if anybody comes in who doesn't know who we are raising money for, feel free to put !charity and be able to get all the information on the RZSS. But of course, we need to celebrate everybody that's here. We need to have some fun about what's going on. There's been loads of fun going on at Frontier recently. We actually celebrated Cambridge Pride, which is wonderful, and Frontier sponsored them. And loads of us went down. We had a great day. So if you want to take a look, we actually have a photo. Here we all are! How cool is this? Frontier was so incredible with sponsoring, and we had an amazing time at the event. Loads of us went down. We took part in the Pride Parade, and so there was just a whole squad of Frontier. We were quite near the front as well, which was very, very cool. And yeah, we just had a wonderful time celebrating the event. We've also had a social event going on. We had drag performers and drag bingo in the cafeteria, and just lots of other stuff to make the most of the month. But of course, Pride is not just June, which is why we are here doing this now and making sure to celebrate, because we want to make sure to try and bring this. Everybody knows that's something that's very important to me, and it's something that I'm very excited to do. Before we get started, I want to take a look at, we have decorated the suite, and it looks great. I have my Pride Penguin, which I have lovingly named Adam. As people know, Adam helps us with our streams and is just across there just now, but refuses to ever make a cameo, so this can be Adam's cameo for the day. And everything is looking wonderful, so a big thank you to our site team for the Pride decorations, and also to our Pride suite that we are using for the stream. Big thank you to Creative Services for that one. And now I think it's maybe time that we introduce our amazing guests from Edinburgh Zoo, so give a warm welcome to Jamie. Hi there, Jamie.
Hello, how are you?
I'm pretty good, how are you? You excited to be here?
Yeah, good. Very excited. Nice, thanks for having us.
Thank you for coming. It's absolutely brilliant to have you, and I believe that this is your first ever thing like this ever.
Yes, it is. So this is the first time I've ever done a live stream, so please bear with me. But I think we've got this. I think we're sorted.
You're going to do brilliant. I'm very, very sure that you're going to do wonderfully. So before we get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about what it is you do and a little bit about what Edinburgh Zoo does?
Yeah, so I am Jamie. So I am currently a Discovery Ranger here at Edinburgh Zoo. So it's actually a new job to me. So I actually just moved to education just over 2 months ago now. So before that, I was actually a keeper here at Edinburgh Zoo for 14 years. So I have worked with lots of different animals, mostly hoofstock. So I spent a lot of time working with our rhinos, our hippos, our zebras, things like that. And then more recently, we got our recent arrival last year of our amazing herd of giraffes who are up the top of the hill, who are pretty amazing. But in amongst my time here, as well as doing the hoofstock animals, I've also worked with some other ones. So I worked with some of our penguins and our chimpanzees as well, who we'll be talking a little bit about later on. So I've had quite a varied career, really, really exciting job working here.
That's absolutely brilliant. It's actually, I keep laughing because this is probably the most Scottish stream that Frontier will ever have between the two of us.
Big on the Scottish.
Absolutely, go Scotland. But apologies to anybody that's in chat if I progressively get more Scottish throughout the stream. I have softened my accent massively due to being on camera all the time, but it always gets worse when I'm speaking to other Scots. But Edinburgh Zoo is actually my home zoo, and it's, for people who don't know, it's where I went to celebrate getting the job here at Planet Zoo. And I actually got it right when you were opening the giraffe enclosure. You hadn't opened it yet, but you were putting your giraffes into the new area when you did it. And so I remember I was just walking along and they just passed me in the middle of the street and I was like, hello.
Oh, I remember that. It was quite a big job getting our giraffes. And we had these huge big lorries, so we had them in the trailers in the lorries. They was absolutely massive. It was a big, big job getting those giraffes in there. So we did it over a week. So we had our first two arrive from Woburn Safari Park. That was Ronnie and Arrow. Then they were shortly joined by Fennessy and Jerry, who came from West Midlands Safari Park. And then at the end of that week, we got our Gilbert in as well, who came from Belfast. So we got our giraffes from all over the place within the week.
I'm not sure which ones you were leading. I just remember this poor keeper in front of them with giant leaves of bamboo or something similar, just really desperately trying to get them to follow them. And they just were not wanting to pay attention.
They're like, quite an amazing show.
It made for some great entertainment, nonetheless.
Oh, I bet. They're very entertaining animals to work with.
But instead of them today, we are here to learn about 3 different animals that you guys have around your zoo and LGBTQ behaviours that are frequently seen in them. So I believe first off we are heading to your chimpanzees, yes?
Yes, we are heading to our chimpanzee house first.
And look at them there!
Here are our lovely chimpanzees. So that looks like Valoo there. So this is Valoo. So Valoo is 8 years old. So I actually worked with him when he was a baby. So he is in there with, that looks like Edith, who's just up the top there. I can't see anybody else in there though. But we have got 15 chimps here at Edinburgh Zoo. So we have got a big, big group of them.
That's amazing. Sorry, this is a live stream, so just for anybody who's wondering, this is live footage directly, which is why if it cuts out stalls at any point, that is why, because we have Amy, one of the people from Edinburgh Zoo there being our wonderful camera person, so giant thank you to Amy. Show some love for Amy in the chat. But you guys have 15!
Yes, we've got a really big group. So we've actually got 2 groups of chimpanzees. Originally we had 2 groups. We had what we called our original Edinburgh chimps. So some of those ones we still have. So we've got ones such as Caffsey, Liberius and Lucy. Those ones were all here originally. And then about 12 years ago we actually brought in a secondary troop who actually came from Bergen Safari Park in the Netherlands. So we, at one point we did have almost 20 chimps, but some of them sadly are a little bit older, so we did lose some just through old age. But our troop is really, really varied. So we have our youngest one who is Missindi. So Missindi is just coming up for 2.5 years old. Valoo, who you can see just here in front of us, this is actually her big brother to Mum Helene as well. So we've got lots of chimps here. Our oldest chimp is actually into his late 40s. He's actually 45, over 45 now, because chimpanzees can live easily up to 50 years.
Wow, that's incredible. I didn't actually know, you just brought this up, that some of your chimps came from Bergen, which is really, really interesting because a lot of our zoo community will know that that's probably one of the most avid zoo builds that any of our community has ever made. One of our creators has done a to-scale full recreation of the entirety of Bergen Zoo, and it's incredible.
That must be impressive.
It's astounding. It's massive, and the detail on it is like, it's down to like sign postage and where the bins are and everything. Like they have an asset folder of over 1,000 images, and they've like gone around every area and recreated it. Absolutely astounding.
That's pretty incredible.
It's very cool to see that that's where some of your chimps come from, because I had no idea. So we're here to learn a little bit about the LGBTQ behaviours in them. So for a long, long time we have known that there is LGBT behaviours in chimpanzees, especially with how them being primates, how close they are to humankind, and similar behaviours in us. For those of you who are wondering, you can get the chimpanzee in the base game of Planet Zoo, but like it was considered rare before. What are the relationships like in the chimpanzees that you've noticed?
Yeah, so here in Edinburgh Zoo we don't have any same-sex relationships as such, but we do get lots of different behaviour. So like you were saying, these guys are really closely related to us. We share about 98% of our DNA. So our chimpanzees are incredibly social animals. So as you can see, Valoo's playing around there just like an 8-year-old should. You can see our other chimps, they love to hang around with each other. So we do have lots of different groups. So some of them have family, some of them live with their family, some live with just friends and alliances. So we've got lots of different dynamics in the group. So sorts of behaviours which you can see here. You see lots of grooming. So chimpanzees, this is a way of building some bonds. This is a good way that they can make friends with each other, is just by grooming. And you do see a lot of playing. So there's lots of different behaviour here to see, but we don't get any same-sex behaviour as such here. However, in bonobos, which are very similar to chimpanzees, they're sort of called the pygmy chimp sometimes, they are the forgotten ape, around about 75% of sex which they have is actually non-reproductive, and it is thought that they are potentially bisexual animals because they will reproduce and they basically go for love, not war, as they call it.
I love that.
And there's Capsy really enjoying some carrots here. As you can see, Capsy's got absolutely plenty of carrots there.
I love this so much. Hashtag binobos. That's going to be my
That's a good one, actually. I like that one. I will pass that one on.
I want everybody in the chat putting hashtag binobo now. Like, they're bi icons. It's been decided. One of the things I do know about chimpanzees is that adolescent females have engaged in sociosexual behaviours more frequently with adult females than with adolescent males or adult males. It's much more common that they will just partake in sociosexual behaviour with each other for fun with other females, which is really, really cool. Do you know much about any other behaviours between chimps in the LGBT community that are quite common or anything like that?
Not that much, actually. We don't really get a lot of that behaviour here. We know that sometimes they do like to have a little bit of fun with themselves, shall we say, and things like that as well. And you do see a lot of closeness, so our chimpanzees do that sometimes. But quite often you do see our hugs. They will be playing around. They do like to hug each other for a bit of comfort. And it's another good way for these guys to strengthen their bonds here at Edinburgh Zoo. Because we've got one of the biggest enclosures here in Europe with our group of 15. So our chimpanzees, they do live in what's called a fission-fusion society. So our building has been designed so that they can go and hang out with their friends. If they want to bond and like hug it out in one area of the enclosure, they can do. And if they want to do it somewhere else, they can go elsewhere. So they can come together, they can separate themselves off. They can get up to a lot of natural behaviours in that enclosure here.
I remember it's like, it is quite the size that you guys have been in, because when I was there, is it not the one that's in, you go indoors, there's like a giant
So you go
house.
down in the entrance, so it's one of the biggest buildings in the zoo. It's actually one of the biggest chimpanzee houses in Europe, so we're very lucky to have it here. So when you come in the bottom of the building, you'll come in and we've actually got a research unit. So as we were saying, chimps are incredibly intelligent. These chimpanzees have got about the same intelligence as about a 5-year-old child, which is pretty intelligent. So our chimpanzees here, what they can do is they can partake in research. So this is usually, it's behaviour research, so it's basically us trying to work out how their brain works and just how intelligent they are and how closely related they are to us. So our chimpanzees have learned things such as puzzle games, where they can play a puzzle to get a reward, and these progressively get harder. We've even had chimpanzees learning technology. We've actually teach them to use virtual reality machines where they can actually go around a little world chasing rabbits if they want to. And we've also made other ones where they can actually learn to count, and they can use a touchscreen to count up to 10. So our chimps are incredibly intelligent here. So once you come through the research room, that takes you upstairs into Badongo, and we have these 3 massive areas. So Amy at the moment, she's actually filming, this is pod 2, so we have 3 areas all similar in size to this. So you can see there that Vulu and Edith are getting a bit cozy there. So these guys are in pod 2 at the moment, but the pods are all very different. They're all different heights. They have different substrates and they have different lighting levels. So sometimes a lot of visitors do like to comment on our building and say it is quite dark. Now, one of the reasons that it's so dark is because these guys are from the rainforest. So in the rainforest, it's incredibly dark some areas. So we have some lighter areas, we have some darker areas. So these guys can go off wherever they want to be. And they've also got a massive area downstairs, which is actually off show. So if our chimpanzees do want to go downstairs, get a little break, have some peace and quiet, they're welcome to go down there. And as well as all of that area inside, they have got an absolutely phenomenally huge outside. It's absolutely ginormous. So you can go outside there as well if they want to hang out there. So it's absolutely humongous, that building.
It's great to hear how many different spaces there are of it, and the fact there's off-site areas. Because obviously I have been there. It was absolutely brilliant to visit, so I know the sheer size of it. But I didn't realise the amount that there was where they were able to get away, and the reason it was built why it was. So that's really, really cool to hear, and it's really lovely to know that you're putting that kind of care in for your animals. Before we get on to speaking about anybody else, I wanted to just remind everyone that hello, I am Eltanin, and I'm one of the community managers here at Frontier working on Planet Zoo, and I am joined by Jamie from Edinburgh Zoo. And today we're raising money for the RZSS, which is the Royal Zoological Society of Scotland. Give a giant shout out to a couple of anonymous donors and to Holly so far, who have all donated. Every little bit does count and helps us towards the RZS's pledge to try and reduce the decline of up to 50 animals by 2030, which is such a brilliant thing we want to do. So, another one, thank you to Osric, that's one of our moderators, for the £20 donation. That's brilliant. So if you are interested in donating, please do try and help us out. You can find out how to if you are over on Twitch with !donate, or if you're ever wondering, just ask in the chat and one of our moderators will help you out. If you're over on YouTube, one of our mods will make sure to give you the link. Just ask away in chat. And again, thank you so much to every single person that is donating. It means the world. And on that note, we'll speak about some of the other brilliant conservation efforts that you guys do over at Edinburgh Zoo with these brilliant creatures. So I believe that you guys have the, I'm going to butcher this, Badongo Conservation Field Station?
Yeah, that's correct. Well done. So yes, we are actually the main sponsors for the Badongo Conservation Field Station, which is actually out in Uganda. So here at Edinburgh Zoo, our chimpanzee enclosure is actually called Badongo Trail, which ties completely in with that. So we are a massive project. We are one of the main sponsors for this project. So it is out in Uganda, and we have a team of people out there who are involved in lots of different projects. So one of the things which we do out there, we do lots of research. So we have lots of workers over there, and what they do is they go into the rainforest, they do lots of biomonitoring, they see what's going on around the area, they like to keep an eye on the chimps and monitor their health. And also what they like to do is like to do a lot of education, a lot of outreach out there. So a lot of where these chimps are, a lot of the places around about them are very, very poor. So what our community likes to do out in the conservation fields is they actually go out, do outreach, and we'll do some education in the local area. However, one of the most amazing things which we are involved with is removing snares. So unfortunately, like I was saying, this area is incredibly poor, and in the jungle there are snares absolutely everywhere. So quite often a lot of these people that live in this area, they don't have anything, so what they're trying to do is put snares in so they can actually literally just catch food, so they can hopefully feed their families. So they're usually aiming to catch things maybe such as pig or deer or things like that. But unfortunately our chimpanzees, they do love to climb, but they also spend a lot of time walking around on the ground. And some of these snares are almost invisible. And what happens, unfortunately, is the chimps are walking along, they may get a limb, an arm, or a leg stuck in one of these snares, and as they try to pull away, it will tighten, and they are made out of metal, and they get tighter and tighter. So it's really, really sad. It's really, really awful. But one of the main projects what we do, we actually have people out in the rainforest all day long removing snares. This is one of their main jobs, and they remove literally hundreds of snares. For every snare they remove, there's probably several more that have been put in the next day, unfortunately. However, since we have actually started this project several years ago, we have actually managed to halve the number of snare-related injuries in our chimpanzees. So the project is definitely working, and that's only thanks to you guys donating today and all the people who visit us regularly, because a portion of their ticket money goes straight towards that project and straight towards our chimps, not only here at Edinburgh Zoo, but also out in the wild as well.
That's absolutely brilliant, and that's great for people at home to hear an example of the kind of things that their money is going towards. So I want to give a shout out to Just Goron and another anonymous donation who have donated since the last time that we called it out. That's us now up to £70 raised already, and we are only just getting started. Right now we're going to talk a little bit more about the chimpanzees, but for Amy, who I believe may be listening in, if you're able to head on over to our next animal, after this we're going to be taking a look at some koalas live at Edinburgh Zoo. But for right now we're going to speak a little bit more about the chimpanzees that you can find in the base game of Planet Zoo. So it's really sad to hear that the snares are such an issue. Is that the main environmental danger that they face? Is there anything else that is a main environmental danger that the chimpanzees are currently struggling with?
So the snares is one of the main problems, especially in the Uganda area where we have the conservation field station. But sadly, these guys do face a lot of threats overall out in the wild. So sometimes they're hunted for bushmeat. So quite a lot of the time they may be shot and taken, and then they're used for food. Sometimes as well the pet trade can be a big issue, because unfortunately things such as pet chimpanzees are very desirable, and a lot of people think they are great for pets, which is absolutely not the case at all. Chimpanzees are very cute to begin with, they are adorable, but they need to stay with their mums, because once they reach about 5 years old, they become so strong, they can be almost 5 to 10 times stronger than a human, and at that point they actually become incredibly dangerous, so the pet trade is a big problem for them. Sadly, things such as global warming is also affecting the rainforest and deforestation as well, and a lot of the places where these guys live, for example, they'll be taking out hardwood trees which may be sold on to the Western market to make things such as really elite bespoke furniture. So by taking out some of these really fine hardwood trees, they're knocking out absolutely giant swathes of these guys' natural habitat, which is pushing them into smaller and smaller areas. So sadly, they do have a lot of threats out in the wild.
That's awful to hear, and it's one that I know is actually faced by a lot of primate species, because we've recently in the Planet Zoo Conservation Pack had the siamangs included into Planet Zoo, which is incredible, and if anybody wants to check that out, you can head over and check that out on Steam. But in doing so, I've been doing a lot of research into the siamangs so as I can make sure to find out facts and interesting things for putting out on our channels. And the pet trade is something that is really awful for them as well. It's one of the leading issues and why they are such a critical issue, because people will get the siamangs and then kill them if they're like just to keep the babies, and then as they grow up, once they're no longer small and cute, they will kill them off again as well, which I believe is an issue with the chimpanzee as well.
Yeah, unfortunately that is an issue with chimpanzees as well. Because quite often once they get bigger, they are, as people have got them as pets illegally, they are unhandleable. And usually they have quite a lot of problems because they are a social animal. Like we're saying here at Edinburgh Zoo, we have 15. They live in this massive social area where these guys can hang out all day. But just like humans, it's just like a soap opera some days. We have fight days, we have good days. Sometimes they fall out with each other. They're very, very complex animals with really complex behaviours and really complex needs.
They definitely are very, very complex ones, but very interesting, and that is why we love them. I have also got two more incredible donations, both of them £30 each, and that's put us up to 130, so I want to give a giant shout out to Bacon Play and Caesar Creates. Bacon and Caesar are two of our most frequent creators and ones I absolutely love looking out for, so thank you so much for joining us, guys, and for such amazing donations. That's us already, nearly halfway to our original target, and we're not even a third of the way through, so thank you so much. I believe our feed has come back in, so just in case Amy is able to hear us, if you're able to head over to the koalas now, that would be incredible. And while we're waiting for that, we're going to take a little bit more of a look at the chimpanzees to give Amy some time to get over there, because of course our off-screen a brilliant host is currently running around between enclosures to make sure that we're able to bring you the feed, so we want to give her some time to manage it. But everybody that is still here, make sure to go into chat, put !donate so you can get the link and help us out. Every penny helps, so as you can help us raise money for the charity, which is the RZSS, the Royal Zoological Society of Scotland, who work with the Highland Wildlife Park and our friends Edinburgh Zoo, who are here joining us today. And you're learning all of this brilliant information from Jamie, which we are loving to hear. Just going to hype you up a little bit there, Jamie. So, how do you get the local community involved in conservation efforts? You were saying that you've got a lot of people going out and helping with snares. Is there anything else that they're doing back over?
So they go out and get snares, and we actually have them to go to schools where they actually teach people about the rainforest and the importance of these amazing animals and the importance of their habitat as well. Because when you have a species such as chimps, when you're trying to protect a species such as a chimpanzee, they're so important to their natural environment and the biodiversity that you actually end up protecting hundreds of species who live around them as well. So as well as removing our snares, a big part of our work as well is just simply education. So our officers out in Uganda go around all the local areas, they'll educate at schools, any sort of people that want to take them on and listen to them. And some people out in that area as well, they're getting wind of this project, which is absolutely amazing. And what they're actually doing is they're inviting our patrols onto their land so they can actually look for snares there as well, which is absolutely amazing for our chimpanzees. Because what this means is that we're literally expanding our territory, which means we can get more and more, which means we can hopefully keep helping them and keep saving them in the future. Because we've already managed to reduce the amount of snare-related injuries by about 50% since this project started. So if we can expand their ranges and have people helping us to help them, that is a big win for us and our chimpanzees out in Africa as well.
That's absolutely phenomenal. It's so good to hear how much you're doing. And of course, education is one of the most important things here at Planet Zoo as well. That's why we've got so many education features in our game. We've got the Zoopedia, and we always try and make sure to highlight all of that on social media and everywhere else that we put it, because the more people are educated on these things, as you said, like the more that they know, the more they can do, then they're able to then help us help the animals and help the animals themselves.
Definitely.
Such a huge difference to conservation. We are now over at the koalas. So if we want to jump our feed over and get some live view at the koalas, these are the koalas over at Edinburgh Zoo. And before we get into it, I am going to give you another reminder that we are here today raising money for charity, because I want to give a giant thank you to another anonymous, and Ross, who have given us donations so far. We have now passed our halfway target of our base goal already. We're at £160, which is brilliant. We aren't even halfway through our stream yet. So if you guys can keep bringing it in, let's try and smash that target and make sure that all this money is going towards these incredible conservation efforts that you're hearing about. And now we're going to speak a little bit about the koalas that you can find in the Planet Zoo Australia pack, which is very, very cool. And they also have a high percentage of LGBTQ behaviour. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the koalas that you guys have?
Yeah, so again, thank you so much for our donations. That means absolute world to us. That's all going to help us and all our animals here at the zoo. So it's a big thank you on behalf of the RZSS to all of you so far. So here at Edinburgh Zoo, we have 3 koalas. So the one who's in front of you just now, this is Tanami. So he's actually our male. So he is 5 years old. His birthday is actually on Boxing Day, so just after Christmas. So he gets to celebrate at Christmas time. So we have 3 koalas here. So Tanami is our male. We also have 2 females as well, who are Kalari and Inala, who are actually half sisters. So they both shared their mum Alinga, and Tanami here, who you're seeing just in front of you, he is actually Inala's dad. So we're very, very lucky that we still have them. So he is kept separately. So he lives on his own just in this part. And then our 2 females, Kalari and Inala, they are in an enclosure just at the end of the koala enclosure area where they live together in a little forested out area.
That's so cool. It's astounding to me that even on this feed, you're able to pick up which one's which and point out the differences between them so quickly. You really definitely know your animals.
I've been here for a long, long time.
So you were saying, I was just looking at this clip in the live feed and how like small he is just sitting up on that tree, and the fact that you took one look, and you're like, I know exactly who that is. I know that koala.
Yeah, these guys, they do sleep a lot. So these guys do sleep about 18 hours a day, and a lot of that is to do with their diet. So these guys, as you can see, they have got lots of eucalyptus there, which is actually quite toxic for them. But they've actually got the bacteria in their stomach where they can actually digest this. So because they eat this plant, which most other animals can't actually eat, this actually means they spend so much time resting as they need to break down all those toxins. So it's a really easy life being a koala.
I can actually somewhat relate. So I have sleeping problems and I normally can't sleep at all. And yesterday I'd been up for ages and passed out and slept for 16 hours. So maybe that was my day just getting ready to be a koala for today's stream.
Your inner koala was coming out.
It was just getting into the spirit of the event. So I know that Edinburgh Zoo yourselves don't have any LGBTQ plus koalas. However, we want to make sure to highlight them because for people who are not aware, loads of zoos around the world have actually been amazed by the fact that female koalas quite often reject male partners to have same-sex relationships instead and will refuse to bond because they want to partake in same-sex relationships. It's very prominent specifically with female koalas. So apparently, while we've got the bonobos, we've got lesbian koalas. The koalas are just very, very big on the L in LGBTQ. And this is also actually very common in the wild. The more that people have been going out and doing like on location and in-field observation and research with koalas, it's something that they keep noticing happening, which is really, really cool and something that we wanted to highlight during the stream what we're showing off. But for a bit more insight into what their general behaviours are like, would you be able to tell us a bit more about their standard relationship dynamics and the kind of stuff that you notice between them?
Yeah, so our koalas here at Edinburgh Zoo, so we keep our male separately and then we keep our 2 females together. So they are half sisters. They don't really tend to interact with each other that much. They do have quite a big area where they've got lots of trees to climb around on, very similar to Tanami's area, which you can see in front of you. So these guys, they are related to each other, they do sleep a lot, they do tend to keep themselves to themselves quite a lot of the time.
Sorry, I got completely distracted by how cute the B-roll camera koala is eating. Is that eucalyptus?
They are. That is eucalyptus there. So what they usually do is they nibble on the leaves and they actually quite eat the buds as well. And just to tie in with our chimpanzees, any of the eucalyptus which these guys don't eat, we actually, so you can see those bunches all around the enclosure. They get lots of different types of eucalyptus every single day. And this eucalyptus then gets given to our chimpanzees who can then use it for bedding. So we like to recycle here at Edinburgh Zoo, so nothing goes to waste because unfortunately nothing else in the zoo can really eat eucalyptus because it's so toxic for a lot of animals. So what we can actually use is we can actually use it for our chimpanzees and they use it for bedding.
That's really cute. During streams like this where I'm lucky enough throughout my work to either work with people like you guys who are coming on live and showing us some animals or going out into the field myself and getting to be live with some animals, I constantly have to remind myself to actually play to camera because I'm so distracted by how cute they are.
They are very cute. So this is us looking into our female enclosure now. So unfortunately I can't tell who that is because she's curled up in a ball, but this will be either Kalari or Inala.
I'm not surprised that they don't interact with each other very much even though they share an enclosure if they're sleeping for 18 hours a day.
It's a hard life being a koala.
It's the hardest. I'm so jealous. I'm also amazed by how, like, she looks like she's sleeping in a ball but somehow still suspended. That takes balance.
Yeah, so they literally cling onto trees, and one of the reasons that they do this is because obviously they sleep all day, but actually koalas do get quite warm because obviously in Australia it can be quite hot. So by these guys actually clinging onto branches, they can actually relocate some of that heat from themselves into the tree, and the trees actually help to cool them down a little bit.
Could have done with that when we had this heat wave the other week.
Oh, definitely. That would have been lovely.
That would have been useful. But I have just noticed, I want to give a giant shout out to, first off, Double J 800, who donated £45, but to everyone that has donated since the last time I shouted this out, because since then we've raised another £100 and we're already nearly at 300. That's incredible. That's a lot in the 5 minutes that I've been busy being distracted by cute koalas. So thank you so much to Major Penalty, to Tom, to several other people who have all donated. Thank you so much. Remember to keep those donations coming. We're already nearly smashing our target, so if we can smash that and get more money raised, let's see how far we can push this and show what the Planet Zoo community can do for these amazing conservation charities. If you are over on Twitch, just shove into the chat !donate and !charity if you want a bit more information on RZSS, who we are raising money for. If you are on YouTube, then just ask in chat and our mods are there and they'll make sure to get those links over to you straight away. Just got to make sure to keep this going because I looked over and saw it, and that's absolutely incredible how much we have raised already.
Yeah, thank you so much to all our donations. They're going to make a massive difference to us here at the zoo. So thank you so much to everybody so far for donating.
It will make all of the difference, and as you heard when we were speaking about the chimpanzees, it's going towards some brilliant efforts, and so every little really does count. But back onto the koalas, why don't you tell us a little bit about what their social relationship is like when they are actually interacting?
So what these guys tend to do they don't really tend to hang around with each other too much. So they do tend to sort of stay relatively close to each other, but they do also quite like their space as well. So we don't get too much interaction from them because, like I say, quite a lot of the time they do spend about 16 hours a day sleeping. So of that 8 hours, which doesn't always match up between the two of them, they don't have a lot of time to interact with each other.
I love the idea that they're almost like long distance partners, even though they're so close, just because they've got completely different sleep hours, they're working on different time zone clocks, they're doing their best. It's very cute, very relatable for somebody that my partner and most of my friends are all also online and in different cultures. It's like, maybe we'll have 2 hours in the day that we're awake at the same time. We'll make it work. So, I believe that we have another, oh no, me reading wrong. Sorry, I don't have my glasses on, so I'm squinting at everything. But we are very, very close to our donation target. So if you guys can help me out, I want to try and hit this 300 as soon as possible, and that would be astounding. If Amy, who is listening, wants to head on over to our other animal, it's a bit further away, so we'll need to give Amy a second to run there, and we can switch over to B-roll. Next, we are going to be having Edinburgh Zoo's most famous and probably most popular animal, I believe, your penguins.
Yes, I love the penguins. They're the best.
I am a very big fan of your penguins as well. I believe, don't you guys even have your own webcam feed of them?
Yes, we do. So if you actually log into our Edinburgh Zoo website, you can actually go on there and watch our penguin cam. I believe we've also got a few other cameras. I think we might also have one for our tigers and one for our pandas as well, actually. I can't remember off the top of my head which ones we'll have. We do have a few of them on there.
I know you definitely had a couple, but I remember the penguin one always being the one that I remember sticking out, because obviously you guys have a bit of a reputation for your penguins, and every time I'm down there...
Yes, we have a massive reputation.
I love them very, very much. It's why when we were discussing partners that we could look into for this, I was like, no, Scotland born and bred, and I've got my penguin pride going on, so I know who I want. But back on your koalas while Amy is running over there, we're of course still looking at some of the B-roll footage that your team wonderfully supplied for us so we can see how cute they are. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about the effort that you guys do for them, where you got them from, anything else that might be interesting for us to know about?
Yeah, so these guys, as we were talking, so we are here for an LGBTQ plus little chat about them. So these guys, like we were saying earlier, they do show a lot of same-sex relationships between our females. We don't get that here at Edinburgh Zoo, but in Australia in 2007, they actually did a project where they actually analysed about 130 individuals all around Australia and zoos in captivity, and about 75% of the interactions were with the same sex, which is really, really interesting. So there's lots of theories about why they do that. So one of the theories is to form relationships, and this way they can actually attract males because of the buildup of hormones. So that is actually one theory as to why they do that. But yeah, here at Edinburgh Zoo, these guys do face a few threats in the wild. So unfortunately, some of you will probably be aware we had these really horrible bushfires over in Australia where quite a lot of wildlife was sadly lost to those absolutely awful infernos that were out in the bushland. So we actually did donate some help out to our animals out in Australia to help our people over there to help these guys help our animals out in the wild.
That's so interesting to hear, but I actually did not know that. So, like, thank you for informing us. And obviously, I did know about the awful bushfires, and that is a very, very sad thing and something we hate. But it's great to hear about the efforts that are going towards on the inside and making them safe and happy. I feel like every time I look over at this B-roll, I keep seeing this guy hugging this koala, and I'm so jealous.
Yeah,
of
so
it.
this footage is actually of Tanami when he first arrived. So this is actually his keeper. I cannot remember off the top of my head what zoo he came from, I'm afraid. But this is the footage of when he actually arrived and got popped in his enclosure for the first time.
That's our
So you
welcome
can see our
home
lovely
footage of
keeper
him.
Lucy who brought him in. And so they do handle our koalas. Sometimes they do handle them like that because we do weigh them regularly. So what we actually have out the back, we've actually got a little stick on a bit of wood on a set of scales. And our koalas, like you can see, love to cling on as they're sleeping. They will cling on to this branch, and then they can actually get an exact weight of our koalas. Because we do have to keep a real good eye on their weight, because eucalyptus is really not that high in nutrition, unfortunately, and they do eat a lot of it. So it's really, really hard for these guys to gain weight, and if they lose weight, that can be a big, big problem, because there's so little nutrition that if they lose weight, it can cause serious health implications for our koalas. So we actually weigh them fairly regularly. I think it might be daily, I'm not 100% sure on that one, but they do weigh them very, very frequently just to keep an eye on them. And that means that we can actually keep on top of this. So if we actually realise that they are starting to drop weight, we can maybe look into that much sooner. Because if these guys do drop a lot of weight, it can be very, very hard for them to put it back on again, unfortunately. So it can be a bit of a problem for them. So we like to make sure they're nice and healthy and keeping a consistent weight.
Absolutely. It is very amusing that because of their diet, despite the fact that they are so immobile and just like never exercising, they still manage to lose weight just by eating
Yeah.
poison.
Yeah,
Basically,
basically, yeah. They eat poisonous plants and then sleep all day. What a great combo.
they really thought through just a like plot twist diet for themselves there.
Yes, they really did. But they're just amazing. They're such amazing creatures. I mean, just look at them. They're just so gorgeous.
They're so cute. I really love the iconic like big nose that they've got at the front. I think it's
Yeah, it's really, really great. Because
and
one of the things about koalas, sadly, during our bushfires in Australia last year, the koalas were one of the species which did suffer the most because things such as kangaroos, for example, they can run. These guys can move pretty quickly, but being up trees, one of their natural reactions is to climb when they get a fright. And unfortunately for our koalas, it was really, really sad, and we did lose thousands of them. Unfortunately, it was so sad.
it's awful. It makes sense that climbing is their go-to, but I'm actually amazed that they can move that fast when they have
Yeah,
to.
they can actually. They can run really quickly, actually. Very rarely do you see it, but sometimes when you go to our koalas later in the day, or if they've just had a feed, they have a little second wind of energy. You can see them bolting around the enclosure. And
Like
sometimes our
cats.
keepers let, yeah, sometimes our keepers let them in the corridor at the back where they can have a little run around in the corridor whilst they're cleaning.
I love that. It's like they get zoomies like cats. I had no
Yeah,
idea.
exactly. A lot of animals actually get zoomies. Believe it or not, our sloths sometimes get zoomies too.
I didn't even. I
Not very
literally
often.
didn't know a sloth could move fast.
They can if they want to.
I suppose anything can if they want to enough. But I feel like I've only ever seen koalas asleep or doing what our B-roll one is doing, where they do like the tiniest plod possible, and that's
Yeah,
about all you
that's
get.
generally what you see them doing, but they do get zoomies every now and then. A lot of our animals in the zoo get zoomies, and it can be very entertaining.
I love it so much. And but that is time for us to head over to the stars of the show, the stars of who you guys have all the time, our friends, the penguin. So if we could jump across, this is live feed. Amy has ran away all the way over there, so big thank you to Amy to get us a shot of the penguin enclosure where I have spent so much time myself. This is making me very homesick, but I love it here dearly. So you guys have a mixed penguin enclosure, I believe, yes?
Yeah, so here at Edinburgh Zoo, we actually house 3 different species of penguin. So we have about 120 birds here. So it is actually, we're really lucky. We've actually got one of the biggest penguin enclosures in Europe. It's absolutely ginormous. That pool, which you can see there that Amy's filming for us, that actually has about 1 million gallons of water in it. And I have once seen it emptied when we were doing a refurbishment, and it basically looks like the Grand Canyon. It is ginormous. So you can see one of our keepers there. I think that might be Sarah. She's just going to do a feed. So as you can see, all our penguins are going to run over for some food. But these penguins here, these are the Gentoos. The dinner bell's been rang. That's it, dinner time. So that's great fun. So yeah, the bulk of the colony is made up with our Gentoo penguins, which are medium-sized penguin here. So you can see them just at the front there and over the water. If you actually look in the water just to the left, I just think I've seen a king penguin swimming along. So our king penguins are the largest species of penguin we have here in Brazil. They are the second largest species overall. So you do get an emperor penguin, which is the biggest penguin, but our kings are not that much smaller, but kings are actually the second largest. So you can see that as one of our king penguins just getting out of the water there. And we also have rockhoppers here as well. So we have a little small colony of rockhoppers as well, who are just over there. There they are. These are our rockhoppers. So we have lots of interesting characters here in this enclosure between our 120 birds.
That's absolutely brilliant. So I cannot stop laughing at them all running in a horde.
That was brilliant.
That was such perfect timing for us to switch.
They're
this
very
week.
polite sometimes.
They're
Sometimes when you're feeding them, what they do is they make a big long line and they will wait patiently for a fish.
oh, that's so
I have a
cute.
I have a picture of myself when we had the Beast of the East Storm a few years ago helping to feed the penguins, and literally they formed an orderly queue which went for miles, and I have a picture of me feeding the birds one by one as they all come get a fish and then walk off and let the next one get it. So they can be very polite sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes.
I've actually had a similar experience. So here is a fun random L fact for you. One of my niche bucket list things is to meet every kind of penguin, because when I was younger, I have already met a rockhopper, and I was lucky enough to get to meet a rockhopper. I gave a little handshake, we did a little high flipper, it gave me a little fist bump. And I got to take a photo with it. I've got a photo of me when I was about 13 with this rockhopper, and I got to feed it. They stink.
Yes, they do.
But it was so great to do, and because of that I've always been like, if I can get the chance to meet at least one more penguin type, then I need to meet every penguin type. And
Definitely.
so now, because of this job, I'm determined to try and meet every penguin. Just make that like my things. The king penguin that you guys have, you can find in the Planet Zoo Aquatic Pack, which you can find on Steam for anybody who is watching and is interested. And before we get into speaking a bit more about these guys, I'm just going to remind everybody that we are here today for a charity stream with our wonderful friends from Edinburgh Zoo, who you can see below me. This is Jamie from Edinburgh Zoo, and this is a live feed of the penguins that they have, which is their most famous enclosure. It's absolutely brilliant, and you can find their camera stream of it on, if you Google, you'll be able to find it from their website, that they have a feed that you can watch them all the time, and they're very, very cool. But I'm very excited to learn a bit more about them. And today we are raising money for the RZSS, which is the Royal Zoological Society of Scotland, who work with Edinburgh and also the Highland Wildlife Park, who we have had on another stream. And they're doing loads and loads of brilliant conservation efforts, but one of the things they are working towards is they have pledged to reduce the decline of up to 50 animals by 2030. And they're on the way for making it, and that is absolutely astounding. So every penny you have goes towards so many incredible efforts for things like that, including Sophia, who just donated. So thank you so much, Sophia. That is us up to £270. So please, please, please get your donations in, because I would love to hit that 300 target. So see how quickly we can get there. If you want, put !donate in chat if you're on Twitch, and you'll be able to get the link directly. If you're on YouTube, just ask and our mods will make sure to give it to you. And help us hit that 300, because it would be absolutely incredible. Now we're going to learn a little bit more about your penguins and all of them. I love that we're getting this like close-up shot. Look at them going.
So these penguins here, these are actually this year's chicks.
Oh,
So
babies!
here at Edinburgh, these are the babies. So you can see a couple of them. You can still see they've still got a little bit of their fluffy feathers left. Just that one just in the middle there, I think, still has these little fluffy feathers. A little bit like a feather boa. But yeah, here at Edinburgh Zoo, we do breed these guys. So we had a really successful breeding year this year. So we actually had 12 of these Gentoo penguins. We had 12 Gentoo penguin chicks, and we had 2 rockhopper chicks as well. So we did really, really well this year. So what happens is we have our penguin have their nesting site in the main enclosure where Amy was filming just a minute ago. We have our nest site in there, and our penguins rear our chicks there till they're about 10 to 12 weeks old. Then at that point in the wild, they would pretty much be on their own, because at that point they start to lose their fluffy down, and then they start to look like big adult penguins. So what happens at that point, they move into this small enclosure here where you can see them just now. So this is what we call our creche. So this is where we keep our little penguins, and we teach them to be big penguins. So this enclosure here, we teach them to be big penguins. They have this little pool here. So this pool not quite as big and not quite as deep. So if our penguins do get into any difficulty, we're able to give them a bit of a hand. And here at Edinburgh Zoo, one thing which we actually do, which some people find unusual, we actually hand feed our penguins. So one of the reasons that we hand feed them is because we have so many birds. We have 120 penguins here, so it's a lot of penguins for our keepers to feed, and it is a lot to try and get to, so we have to keep an eye on all of them. So our keepers actually hand feed them, and what this means is they can keep an eye on all of the penguins every day. So there's a really dedicated team of our amazing bird keepers who actually look after these guys. They spend the whole summer day in, day out looking after these penguins, and they actually hand feed them so that we can keep an eye on them and see how much food they're actually eating. And this is what we have to teach these penguins to do, because up until the time they reach this enclosure, they have their mum feeding them. But then as soon as their mum stops feeding them, they then have to learn to get fed like an adult does. So we put them in this enclosure here, and then once they're in here, they've got their pool to learn to swim in once they can, and then they can get taught how to take feeds. And what we're actually going to do here now is these guys still need to be sexed, actually. So one of the only ways to sex a penguin is to actually take a blood sample from them. So what will happen is our penguin keepers like to have a bit of fun. They actually make up a sweepstakes, so they guess how many boys and girls they're going to have. And then our vets will take a small blood sample from all of our penguins, and then they get put in the main enclosure where they will join the colony. And I'll just point out as well, just to the side there, you can actually see one of our rocky chicks. So this is one of our 2 rocky chicks. Just there we go, just in the middle there. And one thing which is really cute about these, so rockhoppers are actually a crested penguin species. However, when they're chicks, they don't actually have the crest yet, so they look a little bit strange. And then once they start to molt their feathers during their first molt, that's when that yellow crest will come through.
I love this so much. I love that because that one's cleaning. It looks like it's camera shy. It looks like it's getting flustered and like hiding its face. But yeah. This is really, really cool to learn. I had no idea that there was so few gender differences between them. So I'm non-binary, and now it's like, oh my god, genderless icons. You can only tell via a blood test. That's really cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Normally in most species, there's at least like minor gender differences between anything that you can tell from a glance. I had no idea there was like basically none between. Is that with all penguin species?
Yeah, so with penguin species, I'm not sure about all of them, but definitely with the ones we've got, especially our Gentoos and our Rockies, there's no sexual dimorphism whatsoever. So in some species, you get sexual dimorphism. So what that is when the male looks distinctly different from the female. But our penguins do look exactly the same. Even our rockhoppers, who you just see just in front of there, they all look exactly the same. So that's because they don't have any genitalia at all, so there's no way to look that way. And yes, they are pretty much the same size as well. But what you will notice, our penguins actually have bands on. So you can see our little rock hopper there modelling her lovely little band there. So one of the ways that our keepers, once they have the blood test and we know whether it's a boy or a girl, we actually know which sex they are at a glance from looking at their armbands. So all the penguins who have a band on their left are girls, and all the penguins who have a band on their right are boys. And that is one way that our keepers can tell them apart. And then on top of that, every single penguin, whether it be left or right, have their own colour combination so that we can actually see who it is at a glance. So for example, we have one penguin who is Mr. Brew, as in the drink Iron Brew for us Scottish people, so his band is blue and orange. And then we also have lots of other ones, and they have lots of colours. So some of them have got some really fun names. So for example, Mr. Brew. And then we've also got a Diet Brew as well, so that's light blue and orange, for those that are not familiar with Iron Brew.
Sorry, that's just killed me. I can't believe you've got a diet one as well.
Yeah, we have Brew and Diet Brew.
Oh, I love that. You need to get one for the like Iron Brew Zero that they've introduced.
Yeah, I can't remember which penguin species has the bands, but we do have the brews.
Oh my god, I need to meet those penguins specifically.
Yes, well, we actually use colour check sheets here, so we actually have them that I use as part of my job as a Discovery Ranger now, and we can actually show people the colour sheets and they actually work them all out. So we have lots of really fun penguin names, which include things such as Maggie Hatcher. She's one of my personal favourites. And then we have lots of other unusual names. So we sort of name them after different themes each year. So for example, we've had a Harry Potter theme, so we've got a penguin called Bellatrix, we have a penguin called Draco. Then we had a little bit of a Game of Thrones theme, so we've got a penguin called Joffrey. So we kind of work our way around different themes every year. We even had a Disney theme at one point, so we do have some that include Cruella.
And
then we once also did Rugrats as well, so we have some Phils and some Pauls and things like that.
I can't believe in Edinburgh Zoo I have a penguin twin. My name is Eltanin, which is the brightest star in Draconis. I'm named after Draco. There's also a penguin named after Draco.
There you go, there's a penguin. Draco's got a band which is silver and white, I believe his band is.
Would make sense for the stars considering it's a constellation. I love that. Oh my god. Even if I'm not in Scotland anymore, there's a penguin there for me. I love that so much.
You need to come and visit again soon.
Oh my god, if I come to visit, I'm now holding you to letting me meet the Brews and Draco. This can be my penguin goal.
I will do my best for you.
Yes! Next time I'm in Scotland, I'm going to go meet some penguins. I love this. So, you guys were speaking about the nesting season that you guys have had. And I believe that's one of the most common ways that zoos and just in the nature, in the wild, people see LGBT behaviour in penguins because same-sex couples will help raise eggs together. Isn't that right?
Yeah, that is correct. So here at Edinburgh Zoo, we have actually got several and have had several same-sex pairs over the years. So one of our original ones who was most brought to fame by a famous comedian called Daniel Sloss, who actually came and visited the zoo, and he was absolutely amazed that we had a couple of penguins, two boys who were called Colin and Justin. And quite often we've had quite a few pairs over the years. At the moment, we have two pairs. We actually have same-sex pair of boys called Paul and Phil, and we've actually got a pair of same-sex girls who are called Betty and Perdy as well. So we have got two same-sex pairs at the moment. So while this might not seem like a really useful thing, it actually is for us. So because, as you can see, we have so many penguins, we have almost 100 gentoos. So sometimes we obviously lay our eggs, sometimes the parents don't always rear them. So these parents, so these same-sex couples who build their nest just like everybody else, they go through all their little behaviours. So they do a behaviour which is called a bow hiss, which is like a little bit of flirting. They will give each other's pebbles, which is a sign of affection. These guys do exactly the same as that. But one of the most amazing things about penguins doing that is if we have got some penguins who sadly cannot rear their chick for whatever reason. There may be many reasons why they just don't rear a chick or take an egg on, and we can actually foster these eggs into our other penguins. So our same-sex pairs, we can actually give them the eggs, and they've actually did some amazing jobs. So Colin and Justin, they actually managed to successfully rear a chick between the two of them many years ago, and the chick was called CJ, which is an ode to Colin and Justin. And so she's not in Edinburgh Zoo anymore. She's moved on to a different zoo. I can't remember, I'm afraid, which zoo she moved on to. But not just here at Edinburgh Zoo, but other zoos as well. So over in New York in Central Park Zoo, many years ago, they had a pair of chinstrap penguins called Roy and Silo as well, and they reared chicks successfully for several years as well. So it's a very, very common behaviour.
That's absolutely brilliant. But I want to quickly, before we start speaking about penguins again, we've hit our target.
Oh, thank you so much, everybody. That means so much to us here at the RZS. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for that. It's so generous.
Absolutely giant thank you to everyone. We've actually already even broken it. We have managed to get up to 305 already, which is absolutely astounding. So thank you so much. Every penny of it goes towards the RZSS and their brilliant conservation efforts. Every time I say that, it will be a tongue twister. But this is absolutely phenomenal. We are going to put the target up to 400. So if you can keep donating, you can help us raise and put money towards such amazing conservation efforts and incredible animals, and the work that Edinburgh Zoo does, like that you can see right here with these incredible animals. So thank you again to everybody, to Jess and Fists of Snake. Thank you very much. That's a unique username. We really, really appreciate every single penny. It really does count. But now back to the penguins. It is so cool that they managed to foster them, and that so your same-sex couples, have all of them only really gone through one mating cycle and done this, or sometimes do you see them doing it like multiple years?
So some of them have done it for some years. They don't always stay together in pairs. So some of our penguins who have been in same-sex relationships have also been with females as well. So sometimes they do mix it up a little bit. So some years they may be same-sex. Some years they may move on and have a female again, so have a male and female pairing as well. So it really just depends on the season, but sometimes they can stay together for years and years. Like Colin and Justin were together for a long, long time, and they successfully did rear that chick CJ who moved on to another zoo.
I love that. I love that. So I love that you've got like gay penguins with a full foster system. I know that you guys sometimes assist it because sometimes you'll redistribute eggs, so as you're like manually doing it yourself to make sure that they have them. But it's really great that it means that no matter what pairings happen, they're making sure that every egg is raised properly and that every pairing gets a chance. Because I know that in the wild, sometimes penguins, if they don't have an egg, if every couple's being very protective over theirs, which is understandable, they will instead do the same thing with rocks to try and like mimic the behaviour, which is also very, very cute, very cool to see.
Yes, our penguins do love pebbles, so quite often on the nest site, when we have the nest site, so it's just over on the other side of the bridge, but it's actually coming to the end of the breeding season for our penguins, so the keepers are slowly in the process of taking the nest site away, because we don't leave it out all year round. We bring it out at the start of March or April, I can't remember, it's March I believe it comes out. So we put the nest sites out, and then we actually just give them a whole big pile of pebbles. So the penguins actually build their own nest out of pebbles. So what they will do is they will present a pebble to their chosen other half of that season, and then over time they will build up these nests. However, you do see a lot of thievery in amongst the penguins, so quite often what happens is a penguin may take a shine to a particular pebble and they will steal it from another penguin to give to their beloved. And then those penguins might not be very happy about this.
I was going to bring up exactly this. When I was there, it was right in the middle of mating season, and we stood for ages watching these two penguins fight because one of them kept running up and stealing a pebble from this very specific nest and taking it back, and the other one would notice and get annoyed and go back and take it. And we were standing for ages watching these two have a pebble war.
Yes, they do like to have pebble wars. They're sometimes a little bit dishonest with their partners as well. It's not uncommon for a couple of penguins to sneak off for a conjugal visit, shall we say, and then they go back to their beloveds back at the nest and nobody needs to know.
It's fine. If you didn't see it, it didn't happen. It's fine.
Exactly.
The penguin doesn't know any better. Here, babe, it's fine. I brought you a pebble. So aside from their mating and everything else, what is it that you feed them in between? Do they need different fish between different species, or do you feed them all the same thing?
So here at Edinburgh Zoo, we do give them so they are fish eaters, so they are piscivores, which is what you call an animal that eats fish. So these guys do eat fish. So our penguins, such as our gentoos, they generally get a diet which is predominantly made up of whiting, which is a type of fish which we source sustainably. And then we also use herring as well sometimes if we want to bulk them up a little bit, because herring can be quite fatty, so it's quite good if you need to bulk up a bird who's looking a little bit underweight. But then our rockhoppers, what they get, because they're much, much smaller, they actually get sprats, which are much, much smaller. So they get that as the main part of their diet. And then we also give the sprats to our penguins, the rest of the colony, as a treat as well. And sometimes what we do, so we do hand feed them, so you can see our keepers over there. They are hand feeding our penguins each night, so that is them basically making sure that everybody gets a fish. But sometimes for enrichment, what we might do is we might throw some fish in the water to encourage them all to go in and actually just catch them out of the water. But that's not something that we would do to make up the main bulk of their diet, because if you're throwing fish straight into the water, what will happen is all of the faster birds, they will tend to go in and they might get all the fish, but you can't guarantee that they're all going to get some of that food. So that is why it is a little bit unnatural, but it's much better for us and much better for the penguins' welfare here at the zoo if we give them that fish by hand, because then we can really keep an eye on our birds, and our keepers basically know them on name terms, basically without even bans. Some of our keepers just know who they are, and what they can do is they can keep an eye on them. So like just like us, they might eat a lot of fish one day, so one day they might have a big dinner, the next day they might not be that hungry. But over a few days, they can keep an eye on our birds, make sure they're all healthy, get really close to them. They can give them their diet to make sure that they're eating fish, because one of the first things with many animals, especially with our penguins, is if they're a little bit under the weather, or if they've eaten something they shouldn't have, because they're very curious birds. So occasionally they may accidentally eat things like a twig or something that may have blown into the enclosure. But one of the first signs of ill health in a penguin is when they start to stop eating. So it means that our keepers can have a real close eye on our penguins. If they notice that a bird isn't eating over a few days, what they can do is they can let our vet team know, and they can come down and check it out so we can get on top of it sooner rather than later.
I'm glad they were able to keep on top of it so much. I'm just watching this one that's very close to us do the waddle and do that like iconic walk where they stick their head right forward. And I love it. I love that we're able to get it.
I think I can't see who that one is, I'm afraid. I should have brought my check sheet with me.
Oh, we could have played Spot the Penguin.
We could have played Spot the Penguin. It's one of my favourite games. I should have brought my check sheet. My apologies. Next time, maybe.
Next time. However, on that note, for anybody that's paying attention, I don't have my glasses on, so I think it might be here, but I could be wrong. Don't you guys have a Lego penguin in your enclosure?
We do have a Lego penguin. It's just over to this side, so Amy's just going to quickly go over and let us see it.
See, me having been to Edinburgh so much is coming in handy here. I knew you had a Lego penguin.
So we actually have a few Lego penguins. This one's the only one which is out on show. We have got some just outside my office, actually, where I am right now. We have some little rockhoppers. So a few years ago, to make us some conservation issues in the ocean, we actually had a Lego exhibition. It was absolutely amazing. I loved it being a big kid. We had Lego models of lots of different sea creatures. So we had penguins, we even had a Lego orca. It was amazing. And all these creatures that we had lots of different ones all around the park, so the kids could go for a hunt. And we had these little rockhoppers ones. Maybe we actually have several rockhopper Lego penguins as well, and they were hidden around the park, so our visitors got to play the fun game of trying to find them during their visit. So we had, I think it was about 9 of them, maybe. There's quite a lot of them, and they were hidden all around the park, so our visitors had to spot all our rockhoppers on the way round.
That's so cool. I love that so much. I always just remember it because I remember like so many people coming over and people will like reach over and they'll pet the Lego penguin's head.
Yeah, I think he is missing a little bit of his beak.
That's probably why, yeah.
Yes.
And of course you guys, your penguins are very, very famous for many reasons. One, several of the things you do with penguins. But if I remember correctly, don't you have a penguin in particular who is very famous because he is connected to the Norwegian King's Guard?
Yes, that is correct. So I think that is him just at the front there. I can't see his band, but if that is him, this is
Thank
him.
you,
Thank
Amy.
you, Amy. This is Sir Niels Olaf. So he is the Brigadier of the Norwegian Army. So many years ago, during one of our visits during a visit to our Norwegian Army came into the zoo, and they chose this penguin and they basically knighted him, and he actually is the Brigadier. So he's very much a VIP, a very important penguin. And so whenever the Norwegian Army visit Edinburgh, they have to come along and they have to come along and salute him. And one of my fellow colleagues actually met a family from Norway yesterday, actually, who came to see him, and they also saluted him as well because he is incredibly high ranking and very important.
Yeah, he's the mascot and colonel in chief.
Yeah, he's now Brigadier. He's been promoted.
He's been promoted. I didn't even realize that was a promotion. I just knew that he was like very prestigious when it comes to Norway.
Yes.
And is
When
he
you
not
see
the
him,
third?
you have to bow. He is, yes, he is the third one, I believe.
It's very
So you
very
have
cool.
to give him a salute. So when you see him, you have to give him a salute.
Do the other penguins bow to him?
Not really, no.
Well, at least he's got prestige with the Norwegians.
He's a very friendly. He's quite fond of quite a lot of our keepers, because he's very fond. So he likes to spend a lot of time with the keepers a lot of the time. So he tends to hang out with them quite a lot more than he does the other penguins.
I'm going to give him a salute.
Yeah, let's give him a salute.
Let's give him a salute for him. We love him very much. He's doing a good job.
Done.
So he is one of your most famous penguins, but you guys do a lot of events, various other things with your penguins. What kind of activities do you get up to around your zoo with all of these guys?
So we do lots of different things with our penguins. So we do talks daily about our birds. We have a lot of interactions where people can come along. They can actually book what's called a magic moment. So if it's something you'd be interested, if you'd love to come and meet our penguins, you can actually do that through our zoo website. So you can actually log on to Edinburgh Zoo and you can book what we call a magic moment or a keeper for the day experience where you get to see, oh, there's some penguins doing some very beautiful pebble passing over to each other. So yes, you can log on to our website. We have lots of experiences, not just with our penguins, but some of our other animals as well, if you want to come and meet them. And yeah, we do lots of events, but also it is all partly to do with conservation. So these guys, especially our northern rockhoppers, are quite endangered out in the wild now. So unfortunately, these guys, things such as water pollution, oil in the water, and overfishing can be a big problem for these guys. But we have been involved in conservation projects. So again, your guys' donations and any tickets to people at the zoo, thank you so much. It goes towards all of our conservation project with all of our animals here. But one of our penguin projects is that we actually work in the Falklands, and we've actually helped with doing censuses on the penguins. So all these species, you would find them, such as our gentoos, you would find them in Antarctica, but they're found in the Falklands, which is a little bit north, just near Argentina. So we actually have sent people out there to help do the penguin censuses, where they like to keep an eye on the population, do lots of monitoring. We do lots of education and teaching as well about our penguins in that area. So again, that's all projects which can only be done by these amazing donations you've given us tonight.
Absolutely. And on that note, big thank you to Frank, who has just donated. Thank you very much, Frank. And so that is the work that you guys do. I cannot, on Tristan da Cunha?
Tristan da Cunha.
Hey, I did get it. Look at me. I'm doing great.
Well
with
done.
this. So I knew that you guys were doing that, but you guys also have a Wild Genes team, don't you?
Yeah, so here at Edinburgh Zoo, we're actually really lucky. It's actually really close to where I'm sitting right now. We're really lucky. We actually have a Wild Genes lab. So we do lots of different projects there with lots of animals around the park. So we do projects with our penguins, we do projects with our rhinos, all sorts of things. So we can do a lot of DNA testing in there. And one of the things we're involved in is checking the genetics of our penguins. So we've got lots of really amazing projects in there. We're one of the only wildlife-based labs which is actually in the UK. So we're incredibly lucky to have that here.
That's very cool. I knew that you guys do work with checking like population structure and migration patterns and everything within subpopulations, and the Wild Genes team is all the kind of stuff we're able to work on. And that's part of what the RZSS is like donating towards in all of these efforts, which is very cool. So for everybody that's donating,
it's an absolutely amazing laboratory. We don't clone dinosaurs, but we do lots of amazing projects in there.
No, that's Frontier's other game. That's the Jurassic World evolution people. Here we're all about the animals. So Giant shout out to everybody that's donating. Thank you so much for everything that's come in. Every penny raised is going towards the RZSS, which is doing work like you've heard from here from Jamie today. These are our friends over at Edinburgh Zoo. They also work with the Highland Wildlife Park, and they are aiming to reduce the decline of up to 50 animals by 2030, which is a huge deal and so important because animal conservation is very near and dear to our heart here at Planet Zoo. So much so that our most recent pack was the Conservation Pack, which you can find out all about on Steam, and it features 5 animals, all of who are critically endangered or below when it comes to the scale, which is such a important issue to try and help these animals and make sure that they're getting help to bring their population up and try and stop their decline. But today we are here learning about a couple of our favourites and some of the LGBTQ behaviours. We found out some amazing things about some of the couples that you have seen here with these penguins. And oh, look how cute they are. I just turned over and saw them back to the live feed. And so they're very close.
This is one of our younger chicks. Just to the left there, that's one of our younger chicks. So you can see they've still got their little fluffy feathers.
They look so fluffy.
They're so cute when they're fluffy, but when they have this fluffy down, they can't actually go in the water yet because these feathers basically act like a sponge. So until they shed off these penguins, feathers even, not shed off the penguins, shed off these feathers to look like the one just in front of us now, they can't really enter the pool. So you can see that one just in front of us now is rocking quite an amazing feather boa. Just around the back of his neck, he's got that beautiful fluff around the neck. And these ones are all only about 10 to 12 weeks old, so they grow miraculously fast. They basically grow in about 12 weeks. They go from being a teeny tiny little chick to reaching full adult size almost.
That's so cool. Look how fluffy he is. It's making me very jealous. Hold on. I'm grabbing a friend. They looked fluffy, so I grabbed my own friend. Of course, I've got Adam here, who's holding my pride flag. This is Adam. A shout out to the wonderful Adam, who's doing all of our tech in the background. Every time you see a scene change, that's Adam being very, very helpful. He refuses to ever come on and cameo, so this is my cameo in place of him. And now I have one myself that I can join in and just touch because it's so fluffy. And me and our little penguin friends want to give a huge shout out to Mr. A and W Notbeer, I believe, if I'm reading that right, who just donated another £25. So thank you so much for your donation. Every little penny counts. But yeah, while I'm being excited about this fluffy little friend, why don't you tell us anything else that you guys have done, maybe to celebrate Pride or anything else with your penguins that you do around the enclosure? We'd love to hear about them.
So our keepers here, we do have a really amazing penguin project. So we are actually the stud book keepers for the Gentoo Penguin population. So we have some of our penguin keepers and one of our office staff who actually control that entire population in captivity. So almost all of the animals which you've seen tonight are controlled by breeding programs. So these are usually either a stud book or what's called an EEP. So an EEP is what we call a European Endangered Species Program. So what that is it's basically a giant spreadsheet. It basically has all the details about all of the individuals of a species. So we'll talk about our Gentoo one. So we have all these penguins here. So a couple of our keepers who work in the enclosure and one of our office staff who works in the animal offices actually control that stud book. So Dawn just there is actually one of the stud book keepers there who actually does it. And what they basically do is they are in charge of the entire population of this species in captivity in Europe. So it's a very complicated process. So quite often what we will do, so we've not done it for a few years now, but we can move animals to other zoos. So for example, we've sent penguins to other zoos. So we sent some to London Aquarium, we sent some to Belfast, we've sent some as far as Canada as well. So these penguins, they can literally end up anywhere in the world because a zoo never truly owns their animals. They are part of a breeding program, so they can be moved around. And this is all to do with genetics. So what we try to do is we try and mix up the genetics as much as possible. So part of the project that they do is in a stud book is actually looking at genetics and making sure you find penguins who are least genetically similar. So obviously you want to avoid inbreeding as much as possible. Unfortunately, because you're dealing with a closed population, it's really hard. You can never get it 100% away from that because it is a small population. But what you aim to do is move that as far apart as possible. So that's something that controls our chimps, our koalas who you've seen tonight, as well as practically every other animal in the zoo. It is essentially a really, really complicated game of Match.com. And you have to work out the genetics, work out how they're connected and how they're related to each other, and try and move them apart as much as possible. So our keepers here could move these penguins absolutely anywhere, but they are a flock bird, so you do want to keep them. So one of the reasons why we actually do so well with our penguins here is because we have such a big enclosure. We are so lucky that we can actually house our 120 penguins. The enclosure has actually got capacity of about 200, which we have peaked once. It was absolutely insane for our poor penguin keepers. We had 200 penguins one year. We had a bumper breeding season with 45 chicks. It was amazing, but our keepers, it was a lot of work for them. So stud books and conservation, it's all about mixing up the genetics and keeping that population as varied as possible. Oh, look at this
Absolutely.
little fluffy one coming along.
Oh, it's so fluffy.
He must be one of the younger chicks. Because
Oh,
the
I'm so
last
glad that we got you guys to be here when you still had some chicks because this is
Yeah,
adorable.
so the last chick actually moved over from the nest site today, so I believe that might be him just on the left there. I'm not 100% sure off the top of my head, but he might be the last of our chicks this year to move over. So like I was saying earlier, we put our penguins, have them on the main penguin site in the main enclosure where they're with their parents or whoever's rearing them. And then once they get weaned off, they will then get moved into this creche enclosure. So the last penguin actually moved over there today.
Well, that's incredibly well timed for us. Oh, look, they're so
Yeah, so
cute.
now they're gonna learn. They're in penguin school, so they need to learn how to be big penguins and learn how to feed and learn how to swim.
I love every time you say that, I get this image of like penguins standing in like little kids where they're in parents' shoes that are too big for them with like a briefcase that's half the size of them, being like, I'm going to be a big penguin.
Yes, they're very much like that. They're just the best little birds. I literally go and see the penguins every single day that I work because I can't avoid them. I just love them,
I would do the same. They're so cute.
and you
I
can
want to
watch
give
them all day long.
You can. I want to give a giant shout out to Danny, who's just donated. Thank you so much. We are now over another £55 on the way to our next target. Our next target is 400. So before the end of the stream, if you guys can go donate, we only need another £45 and we will have hit our next target, and that would be absolutely astounding. So if you are on Twitch, just !donate in the chat and you can get the link. If you are on YouTube, just ask and one of our mods will make sure to get that link to you. Every single penny will count. Help us smash that 400. Absolutely incredible. And while we are going to keep trying to nudge you guys towards there so as we can make some brilliant change from Planet Zoo here, I have a question that just intrigues me. I have a couple actually. Do you guys ever see mating between different species? Do you ever see them trying to bond?
No, not really. So that's not something that we've ever really seen here at Edinburgh Zoo. So the species are very, very separate to each other. So our king penguins are an all-male group. So we're not breeding from our king penguins at the moment. But one of the reasons why we always have king penguins at Edinburgh Zoo, they are part of our history. So we were actually one of the first zoos that actually managed to successfully rear king penguins. So they're a really important part of our history. So Niels Olaf there, not only is he the brigadier of the Norwegian army, they're actually a really special place in the zoo's history, where we were actually one of the first zoos to actually house these penguins and successfully get chicks from them.
I love that.
And I've totally forgotten my line of thought now. I was about to say something else that's went right out my head.
Oh, don't worry, you're fine. Trust me, it happens to the best of us. I'm here every week and it still happens to me, especially when you're busy being distracted by cute penguins. But I was just really interested in if that's something you ever saw, because I had no clue. Because obviously you guys have a very mixed enclosure and it's very open.
Yeah, well, that's what we were talking about. I'm back on track. So yeah, they generally do mix together. So you will see the kings hanging around in the breeding site and just around the enclosure in general. You quite often find Niels near our keepers where he likes to hang out with them because he is very fond of our keepers. And after all, they have got the fish bucket, so how can you not love them? And then sometimes our rockies for the breeding season, what we actually do is the rockies get moved into the creche. So where our chicks are just now, that is where the rockhoppers actually have their breeding season. So we move our rockhoppers. So this enclosure, it's really, our keepers work here all day, every day, making sure our penguins follow the process as naturally as possible. So our penguins, rockies especially in the wild, they would move to their nest site where they would then have their chicks. So what we do here is we move our penguins from the rockhoppers get moved from the main enclosure and they get moved into the creche enclosure. And their breeding season usually starts a few weeks earlier than the Gentoos. So generally by the time our first Gentoo eggs are starting to be laid and starting to hatch, our rockhopper chicks are well on their way to being big penguins. So then what we'll do, because they're a little bit ahead, so our two rockhopper chicks are in there just now with the other penguins. They will get on just fine. They would live naturally in the wild because they're all from the Falkland Islands, so they would live naturally together in colonies. So even in Britain here, we get sometimes mixed seabird colonies. You may get guillemots, razorbills, gannets, things like that. They all sometimes colonise together and they'll have their own spaces in the rocks. Our penguins kind of do the same, so they will tolerate each other. You do sometimes get a little bit of aggression between the species. Sometimes our king penguins being a little bit bigger, they can be a little bit boisterous sometimes. And so can our little Gentoo penguins as well. Oh, they're all away for a walk again. But yeah, so we move our rockhoppers into the creche for their breeding season. Then we move the rockhoppers out and then we start moving the Gentoo chicks in. And then in a few weeks from now, what will happen is all the penguins will be back into the main enclosure again.
They'll all be one big happy family.
So it's a big cycle for our penguin keepers every single year to go through this cycle every single year. So it's a big job for them. So they're a very dedicated team.
Very much so. But on the note of breeding, I'm just asking questions I'm generally interested in now because they've come to my mind. So how does breeding work for penguins? Because as you mentioned, they don't have genitalia, just genderless icons. I'm still stuck on this. How is it that it works with their eggs and everything for everybody at home who doesn't know?
So basically what they'll do is, so our mating season, our breeding season starts in March. So what our keepers do is at the start of March, we bring out the penguin nest site. So what we have is we have these big rings. So they're fairly big, huge rings. They look a little bit unsightly, but the penguins, it would be how they would nest in the wild. I'll actually just point out, so I'll just go on a little tangent here. If you look in the water there, you can actually see our very famous penguin Snowflake just in the middle there.
Oh yeah.
So if you can see him just swimming along, so we'll just point him out quickly. So he is one of our other very popular penguins here at Edinburgh Zoo. He is called Snowflake. So Snowflake here, he is actually a leucistic penguin. So what we mean, leucism, it's called leucism. It is basically a pigment condition, so he actually has a little bit less pigment than the other birds. So he has this really silvery back, whereas our other penguins, as you can see all around him, they've all got a black back. So he's not an albino, because if he was albino, he would be pure white and he would have little red eyes, but he does have some pigment. So it's a very, very rare condition. So we're very lucky to have Snowflake, actually. He's very popular with all the penguins. They all love him. And so he's our bit of our silver penguin, shall we say. And the ladies love him, and so do some of the boys. And he has this really interesting condition, but in the wild, he actually would really struggle to survive. So if you look at our penguins, they are black and white. Now, a lot of people might not be sure why they're black and white, but it's actually what's called counter shading. So if you look at a penguin, as you see the ones swimming along the water there, they're fairly well camouflaged from where Amy's standing. You can see, as you look down into the dark abyss of the pool, you can see the dark back. So it helps them to blend in. So if a predator from above, things such as a petrel or a bird of prey, for example, is looking down below, they will really struggle to see those penguins. And then if a predator from below is looking up the way, they will also have that white belly. So they're looking straight up and they will see the white belly and the sky. However, because Snowflake has got a white back, he would stick out like a sore thumb. So he would really not survive in the wild, unfortunately. We are incredibly lucky to have him. And he has actually successfully reproduced as well. And a few years back, he did actually have leucistic chicks as well. So it's a genetic thing, so it gets passed down every few generations. We've not had it for a few years now, but we did have leucistic chicks at one point, and they actually moved on to other zoos. I can't remember where they went, but they did move on to other zoos.
We do actually have leucism, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, in Planet Zoo. We don't unfortunately have it for our king penguins, but we do for our chimpanzees, for your Western chimpanzee.
Oh, fantastic!
You can get leucistic chimpanzees in the game, which is very, very cool.
It's very, very cool. I'm really sorry, I forgot what the original question was now because I went off on a little tangent about Snowflake.
Oh, that's totally fine. Snowflake deserves the camera attention. Snowflake's gorgeous. Snowflake's beautiful.
He's as big a celebrity as our Brigadier of the Norwegian Army. He is he's probably our other celebrity penguin. Everybody loves him.
He deserves it. If he's putting that much effort into being just like a shining star, obviously he deserves the attention. But my question was how breeding works if penguins do not have distinct genitalia, like how it is that they actually manage to
that was it. Yeah, so as you can see, just where Amy's pointing the camera over, you can see we've got that little hut just in front. So that is where we set up our penguin breeding site. So you can see some of the nest rings are still there, but our keepers are slowly in the process of taking them away because that's us coming to the end of the breeding season. So what our keepers do is they put these nest sites down, and then they literally bring in trays and trays of rocks and pebbles. It's a really not a very nice job for the keepers to do every single year, where they bring in these big trays full of rocks and pebbles, and they put them down in the enclosures. So then what happens is our penguins pick their nest site. Some of them will go back to the same one every single year. Some of them may change it up. And as we get our younger chicks, they might also pair up with other birds. So they can decide whoever they want. They may pair up with a girl. They may pair up with a boy. They can pair up with whoever they want to pair up with. And then that's when the process of nest building begins. So what will then happen is you'll start to see the penguins building their nests out of these pebbles. So this is when you have the mad pebble dash, where they're all running around grabbing the most pretty rocks for their beloved so they can fill their nests with all these rocks. And then that's when you also get the penguin stealing the rocks, because if that penguin wants that rock, it's having it. So it's like, I'm going to take that one, and you can have this one instead. And then they will fight it out for a pebble, which sounds crazy, but for them it is really a good sign of devotion. And then you will also start to see behaviours such as bow hissing, where our penguins will put their neck down and they will hiss at their chosen partner. And then when you see the mating, they actually have what's called a cloaca, so you can't actually see it. So they sort of like the female will lie down, and the male will jump just on her back, and then that is how they will mate with each other that way. And then a few weeks later, they will, I can't remember off the top of my head how long the period is, but then they will start to lay their eggs. And they'll all start to lay their eggs, and then, so usually they all hatch around about within a few weeks of each other. So some will hatch early, some will hatch later. And then at that point, we will start to get our chicks, who start off these tiny, adorable, cute little balls of grey fluff, like those ones you saw just in the creche, but teeny tiny versions, absolutely adorable. And then they literally grow at a crazily fast rate, so the parents will rear them together, so they will both take their part in rearing them, and they will rear them together. And then once they reach about 10 to 12 weeks, at that point, the chicks will then start to be sort of kicked off the nest, because that's essentially reaching the teenage years. Like, off you go. We've looked after you all this time. You're on your own now. So at that point, when our parents stop feeding them, this is when we then move them into the creche area, which we were looking at earlier, which has got the chicks in it just now. And that's where they learn to become their big penguins.
I love penguin school. Also, I'm loving that it just cut to live and we just had one running right past us. That was so cute.
Yeah. They're so, you can literally watch these guys for absolute hours. I love watching them. They're just the best. They're so curious about lots of things. They just love everything. They're so curious.
They seem very, very friendly. My other question was just, how do you get their armbands to not just slide off them?
So the armband is on a little cable tie. So what they do is just at the top of the base of the wing, so it sort of like dips in just a little bit. You can kind of see it there. So this one, I believe this one may be Dennis or Nasher, but I'm not 100% sure. We did have a Dennis the Menace team at one point. This might be them. I'm not 100% sure. Don't quote me on that one.
Shout out to Dundee.
Yeah, so that's yes. So this is actually a cable tie. So those little beads are little hammer beads, and so they pick the colours, put the colours on, so they have them all a different colour, and it's a little cable tie, so it's not on too tightly. So our keepers have worked with our penguins a year, so it's on just enough that the band will be on securely, but not so tight that it will damage it. And sometimes the bands do fall off, in which case we have a situation with a naked penguin, as our keepers call it.
It's hammer beads you use? Do you sit and like make them all yourselves?
They literally, yes, it's literally little beads on a cable tie. It's a teeny tiny little white cable tie, and then you just put that on and then you just clip the end off. So the only penguin in the enclosure who doesn't actually have a band, apart from our chicks, is Snowflake, because he doesn't need one, because he is very, very noticeable. So he's the only penguin that doesn't actually have a band, but the rest of them do have bands.
Maybe he wants one for fashion. I can't believe Snowflake's being left out.
Yeah, he's too cool. He's too cool for school.
He was a bit like, you want me to have an armband? Like, hold my flower. I've got a whole other plan. I don't need to be identified like that. I love it. The star of the enclosure. He was like, "Oh, you work for the King's Guard. Do better. Look what I can do."
Snowflake's actually one of our oldest birds. He hatched out in 1996.
He's nearly as old as me. Wait, how old can penguins live?
They can live up into their 30s quite happily.
I did not know that.
So he's one of our oldest penguins.
Somehow I didn't expect you to have a penguin that was born a year after me. That's just really odd to think about. Also, giant thank you to Joshua, who just donated £15. That is brilliant. We are only £30 off of our next target. So please, 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 any last minute donations, get them in. Just !donate if you are on Twitch, and if you are on YouTube, just ask in the chat and our mods will get the link across to you. Every penny counts. If we could get that last £30 in, then we'd hit our second target, which would be absolutely astounding. And all money does go towards the RZSS, the Royal Zoological Society of Scotland, who are doing several amazing conservation efforts that you can read about. If our mods could put the RZSS link in the chat, you could read all about the work that they are doing. It's absolutely incredible. So big thank you to Joshua. So before we head off, why don't you tell us a little bit more about just some of your penguins? Maybe tell us any interesting tidbits you've got, anything else that you guys are doing for conservation that might be interesting, and also I want to hear a couple more of your favourite penguin names.
So we have got lots of really interesting penguins. We've already met Niels, we've already met Snowflake. We have also got a penguin called Kevin, who is a little bit aggressive and he can be a little bit grumpy. And one of the reasons that we believe he's so grumpy is because he was named after Kevin from Home Alone because his parents left him. So
oh my god!
He got called Kevin. So he's a little favourite character. And one of our other favourite characters, we have our little old lady rockhopper. She's called Mrs. Wallowitz. And our keepers go in the morning and they go, "Morning, Mrs. Willowitz," and she likes to give them a little call back, which is just the most precious little sound. And she'll actually call back the keepers. If you go, "Morning, Mrs. Willowitz," she will call back to them.
That's adorable. That's much more wholesome than poor Kevin. I cannot believe
Yeah.
you were like, we're going to name you for life about the fact you were abandoned.
Yeah, but they've got so many different little characters. You've got some shy birds, you've got some quite cocky birds, you've got some that are just really stand out, and some that just like to keep themselves out. They're just so individual. They've got the most individual little personalities. Our keepers absolutely adore them. I mean, how can you not adore them? Like our keepers, some of our keepers have worked with them for almost 15 years, if not longer, some of our keepers, and they're just so precious. I mean, they're so cute. I mean, look at them.
They are adorable. I love them so much. And we've just had another £20 donation from Eric. So thank you so, so much, Eric. That is absolutely brilliant. And we are about nearing the end of the time because it is 5:30, so I believe the zoo is going to be closing soon.
Yeah, we're going to be closing very soon.
But it has been so, so wonderful to have you and Amy here with us. So giant thank you to Amy, who has been the one in the background controlling our live feed camera the entire time, running between our enclosures and making sure that we can see all of the animals straight from Edinburgh Zoo, which is really, really cool. And of course, a huge thank you to, to Jamie. So everybody in the chat, give a giant, huge thank you to Jamie. Have you enjoyed being here?
I've had a great time, and again, thank you so much on behalf of the RZSS. I mean, that money that's all been donated is just so generous, and it means the world to us because we can put that into our project so we can get on with our mission statement of protecting all of our species, not only in the zoo but also in the wild as well. So a huge big thank you to everybody on behalf of the RZSS for all your kind donations. It's much, much appreciated. And please feel free to come and visit us anytime. We will be happy to have you. So you can come and see the penguins for real, come see our chimps for real, come and see our koalas as well.
We just broke 400. Right as you were saying that. Giant thank you to Lisa. That is us at £405 donated during the stream. That is us broke 2 different targets that we had set in this one stream that we have had. So thank you. And another one. Oh my God, thank you to Jersey who just donated £30. That is us up. We keep going. This is brilliant. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you so much, everybody. It means the world to us. It really does. It's going to help us big time with our animals here in the park and out in the wild. So thank you again, everybody. Thank you so, so much for your donations. And thank you for listening to me as well. I hope it was okay for you. Hope you got all your questions answered.
You've done a great job, Jamie. Thank you so much for coming on and joining us. I've had a great time. It's been amazing getting to see a little bit of home and hear a little bit more about you guys.
Come back and visit us again soon. Come and say hi.
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to come down. I'm going to come and get you to let me meet some penguins. I'm going to hold you to this promise.
I will see what I can do.
I will do my absolute best. I'm just going to be emailing you like, please, please, I want to meet penguins so badly. So once again to everybody, give some love for Jamie in chat. It has been brilliant having you. And thank you for all of the money raised. I believe we are at £440, and all of that money goes towards the RZSS, which is the Royal Zoological Society of Scotland, who work with Edinburgh Zoo and our friends who you might have seen here on another stream, the Highland Wildlife Park, doing so many amazing things worldwide. And they will put information about that in the chat. If people could put the RZSS link, you can learn a little bit more. But every penny will count. And today we've been learning a little bit about some of the animals that Edinburgh Zoo has, and especially the ones that have LGBTQ behaviours, which is why we've got our lovely little penguin here with a pride flag who is joining me in celebrating. And it's been just great to celebrate Pride. Not just at Frontier. Frontier did sponsor Cambridge Pride recently. We've done some stuff internally, and now this on Planet Zoo. And we know it is July. We know it's not Pride Month, but that's because Pride does not just only exist in June, and keeping that alive year round is really important. If you head over to our channel, sometime on the 28th, we will be announcing the winner of our PlanZoPride competition that we held last month. So keep an eye out for that, and you'll be able to see who won on that for anybody who has been wondering about our competition. And with that, with £440 raised, we're probably going to end it here. So giant thank you to Jamie again for being here, and for Amy, who's
Thank you for having me. And thank you so, so much again for all your donations. It is a big deal, and RZSS thanks you greatly. So make sure you come and visit us.
Yes, I can wholeheartedly recommend.
Come see our penguins. Come see Niels and give him a salute.
Give him a salute. Just go straight up, just stand at the enclosure being like, you deserve it. I can
We'll know what you're doing. We'll not just think you're a crazy person. We know what you're doing.
I'm sure you see it often enough.
Definitely. But thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for having us.
Very, very much.
Thank you for all your donations.
It means the world to all of us, and we're really grateful at Planet Zoo to be able to do this kind of opportunity, because of course the animals is what's most important to us. That's why all of us here, we're giant animal fans, and it's something that we love to champion. That's why we do what we do. That's why we're happy to work on what we do. And yeah, it's been a wonderful time. A giant thank you to all of our mods in chat, to my team who have been helping out, to Adam who's been controlling everything, to the creative service team and our site team for the decorations, for the Pride deck, for everybody that's made today's stream possible. It means the world to me, obviously, as somebody who is non-binary and pansexual, to be able to do opportunities like this on a product in a game that I love so much. I've had a wonderful, wonderful time, and it means an incredible amount to me with everything I do for Planet Zoo to see our community helping put such an incredible amount towards such a wonderful charity, and one that's close to my heart. I cannot recommend enough that if you're in Scotland, head to Edinburgh Zoo. It is a wonderful day out. And with that, we will say goodbye. So, do you want to help us wave out? Yes, let's give a wave out. I'm going to say goodbye to everybody. Thank you for our wonderful time.
Hey, have a good night, everybody.
Yes, there we go. If you want to join us waving out, we can give a final salute to our good friend. So this is to, I've forgotten his name, Nils?
Niels Olaf, sir.
Niels Olaf. So giant salute from everybody to Niels Olaf, and thank you to everybody who's donated. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.